you wrote this article about navigating hypergrowth, and there was a quote you shared with it that really resonated because it spoke to a lot of that self doubt. And so you'd mentioned recognize that when you're in uncharted territory, that's precisely when the negative head talk creeps in. And when I read that, that registered so deeply because for many folks jumping into engineering leadership, like you're in, oftentimes it's uncharted territory. Oftentimes people fell into that role, optimizing for skills that were in sort of a different area. And so then it became very quickly, you feel like you don't have the right skill set or you feel like you're not doing enough. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so relatable. And then the other side of that, and like what you just mentioned, is the antidote to self-doubt is compassion. And that also really resonated. And so, normally we ask this question towards the end, but I thought it was so powerful. Could you share a few strategies to overcome that self-doubt? Could we jump right to that?
With let's talk about self-compassion because it feeds straight into this whole self-doubt. I think, one, self-doubt is pervasive across all of us, right? And so it's not that something's wrong with me if I have doubt. It's more of how do I meet that and move into that? And so what I look at is, any kind of negative feelings, I'm not trying to move away from it. I'm trying to actually really dial up curiosity and say, oh, what's actually here? So first step in self-doubt is face it. Don't try to run away from it or try to explain it away. Because, it's, if you've ever been around a little kid, they have something to say and they'll come up and it's like start poking your leg. It's like 3 years old and say, hey, I got something. If you ignore them, what do? They just keep going more and more and more and intense. So, but if you turn to them and say, yeah, what do you have to say? They'll just let you know. And then like, okay, done. And so it's, the first thing is, look at it and face it. Second piece, you have to be able to name it. There's this whole kind of little saying, you have to name it to tame it. So if I can name what's actually going on, then, physiologically, it's like, you've got the message. I can actually start dialing down now. And so face it, name it, and then engage with it and say, what are you actually trying to tell me? What's the underlying message that's here? Another really powerful question is, how old do I feel in this moment? And so the voice in your head that's saying, oh, you're not good enough and you can't do this, then, just being quiet with it and asking, it's like, oh, how old do I feel in this space? And typically you'll find that you feel like a much, much, much younger version of yourself. And then from that place, I'm actually giving compassion to that younger part of myself. And there's a whole thing around self-reliance of my adult me can actually embrace the younger part of me, which is typically where the self-doubt is coming from. It's this frozen aspect of ourselves. Another powerful thing you can do is actually tell that part of yourself how old you actually are. And many times there's amazement. It's like, wow, seriously? This is all happening internally. And from there, I find that a lot of that starts to dissipate. A lot of the energy of it starts to dissipate. And then finding humor in it, is another powerful way of dealing with self-doubt. Not laughing at yourself, but laughing at some of the underlying beliefs. It's like, oh, wow, that's kind of a silly belief that I've been carrying around. But if you don't face it, it just tends to build up noise and build up noise and build up noise because I don't want it. And when we run away from things we don't want, they just amplify.
Do you have examples, either yourself or how you help other people to face that self-doubt using this mechanism?
Yeah, I do. So one of the things I've learned, I didn't coin the term, but do you remember stop, drop, and roll? It's a very North American thing. So if you didn't go to elementary school in North America, what stop, drop, and roll is we teach kids this all the time. When you're on fire, then don't run because that just fans the flame. So you stop, drop to the ground, and then roll. So I use that same thing around self-doubt or, negative talk. If you continue with the negative talk, it just reinforces itself. So stop, acknowledge it, and stop. You can even stand up, change your posture, say stop. And the drop is you drop into your breath, drop into your body, drop into your heart, and then you roll in self-compassion. And the self-compassion kind of mantra is, this is a moment of pain. Everybody feels pain. I'm not alone. And may I be kind and gentle to myself. That action of, something's going on around self-doubt, just saying stop. And I'm not being angry at it. I'm just saying, it's time to stop. And so drop in and then roll in self-compassion. Got some other mantras around that as well. But, that's one of the basic ones, is to be able to see it and don't fight it, but just really meet it in a compassionate way.
Disrupting the pattern, like the habit or pattern, for folks who maybe aren't doing that. I'm thinking, because we just finished up our summit, and that was a very intense period where we were planning the production for many months, and then the production day itself was very long. And so the pattern I felt the next week was very much about, wake up and I still have this sense of urgency or panic related to, like, am I going to get this done? I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it. And this morning, like, with what you shared, really resonated, because I went for a little walk this morning, and I went into the woods in the back of where we live, and I just sort of stopped. I started focusing on my breath, because there's like beautiful trees, and I was like, why do I feel so panicked? And just in that moment of awareness, like, helped calm everything down, and to just become, I guess, ready to try something new. And so with what you shared, like the pattern there, to me, seems like a really powerful way to disrupt probably the unconscious way that people could go through a day, which could be unconscious panic, I think, or unconscious anxiety. And so that just really resonated, because it sort of spoke really concretely what I thought worked for me this morning, which was great.
Yeah. And what I hear from you as well is that was more mindful awareness, right? And what I mean by mindful awareness, I'm aware of this, but I'm not beating myself up about it. And the mindfulness is, I'm aware of what's happening without judgment against myself or another. And I think that's the big key.
A lot of time I feel once you are aware or detect you are in that mode, or you have the self-doubt or being uncomfort, that reaction of being anxious or feel guilty or shame, it's almost happens immediately. So it feels like it's one thing. It's not separated. So I think it's really important to be able to create spaces and let people feel that they are actually separate things, the reaction and what you observe. So Kevin, I'm curious whether you have any advice for people to do that more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing is, where are you right now? Am I in my head or am I in my body? And I would say 99% certainty, when that's happening, we're actually in our heads. And so by just simply, touching your arms, your abdomen, your leg, attention to your breath, if you can get into your body, then I think the perspective shifts drastically. So, as you're regulating, as you're feeling something, then if you can get back into your body, then we have a much better sense of groundedness in the moments. And so, a technique that you can use is, just feeling, am I in my body? Where am I? Can I feel my feet on the floor? Can I feel my, my butt in the seat if you're in the middle of a meeting? A little technique is, can you rub your fingers together with, just the right pressure so I can feel the ridges of my fingertips. It takes real attention in order to do that. And so when you move your attention to something that's more physical within you, then you can have much more presence versus, the crazy tape in your head just running nonstop.